Surrounded by war and nearly forgotten to time, the crumbling ruins of the cities of Nineveh and Babylon may hold some of the most incredible secrets of the ancient world. Traveling all across Mesopotamia, we will follow the clues left behind from thousands of years of history, following the rise and falls of empires, all leading back to the Sumerian gods of antiquity. From the Battle of Nineveh and the downfall of the Assyrian Empire, to the Royal Ashurbanipal Library and the giant cuneiform writings seen at Jerwan, we will piece together the remarkable story of the past, nearly forgotten and unheard of to most. The ancient city of Jerwan is located just north of Mosul in the Nineveh province of northern Iraq, in a dry, sparsely populated part of the region. Nestled between the foothills of the Zagros Mountains to the north and the sprawling valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers to the south, Jerwan functioned as a large canal and aqueduct center, serving as the lifeblood of the magnificent city of Nineveh, providing drinking water and irrigation for the entire region. Jerwan and the city of Nineveh was ruled by a succession of kings, most notably Sennacherib and later Ashurbanipal, who were considered high royalty and part of ancient bloodlines that connects all the way back to the time of the Sumerians. King Sennacherib is credited with designing the advanced aqueducts seen at Jerwan, believed to be the first of its kind in the world, providing water from the Kenis River to the lavish gardens of the city of Nineveh to the south. Jerwan functioned as a large central hub for the aqueduct and canal systems that led through the narrow canyons from the mountains to the north. In fact, these canal and aqueduct systems are so advanced that most archaeologists and experts that visit Jerwan are left scratching their head in amazement and confusion over just how these ancient Assyrian people were able to build these precise and elaborate structures in such rough terrain. To fully understand the importance and significance of Jerwan and the Ashurbanipal Library, we have to first understand the role of the cities of Nineveh and Babylon to the ancient Mesopotamian world. The ruins of the city of Nineveh are found just north of Mosul in an arid and dry region of northern Iraq, along the eastern banks of the Tigris River. Most of the Mesopotamian region, including the city of Babylon, were part of what's known as the Neo-Assyrian Empire, which covered a vast territory from the southern Zagros Mountains and Tigris and Euphrates rivers, southwest along the Mediterranean, all the way to Egypt. Nineveh acted as the capital and central library for the entire Assyrian Empire, and because of this, great jealousy and greed grew from the regions to the south and east, who conspired to overthrow the empire. History of Nineveh shows it was created in honor of the Akkadian goddess Ishtar, known to the Sumerians as Inanna, and is now believed to be the location of the famous Hanging Gardens spoken about in ancient times, previously thought to be in Babylon. The cities of Nineveh and Babylon were considered the royal and political centers of the Assyrian Empire and represented both sides of the ancient bloodline kings, which date back thousands of years before modern history books are willing to acknowledge. As unrealistic as that may seem to some, cuneiform writings, like the Sumerian Kings List, prove without a doubt these ancient lineages, reigns, and the names of these past kings. Turmoil began in the Assyrian Empire when King Sennacherib's grandfather made himself the king of Babylon years before, creating a dual monarchy and great tension between the two royal families. Unrest between these two sacred cities and the powerful families living there would eventually lead to war and chaos within the empire. The sheer military power and strength of the Assyrian Empire can be seen proudly portrayed in murals from the city of Nineveh, depicting armies of soldiers with advanced weaponry and horses. Because the Assyrians focused their empire on military dominance and the conquering of other regions, stealing their resources and libraries, they developed many enemies, which even included parts of their own territory, such as the region of Babylon, who, together with the ancient Persian and Chaldea people, would eventually rise up to lead to its collapse after years of bloody warfare. The Assyrian capital was the lavish city of Nineveh, which acted as a central hub for its government and vast library of Ashurbanipal, including the famous Hanging Gardens. Those who visited Nineveh described it as one of the most beautiful cities in the world, with immense wealth and lush gardens surrounding the entire city, only possible because of the water provided by the aqueducts at Jerwan. At the same time, Babylon to the south grew in power, focusing instead on military strength, with its sights set on conquering Nineveh and taking the empire by force. The ancient city of Babylon was built along the banks of the Euphrates River, 300 miles south of Nineveh, and was dedicated to the solar deity known as Shamash, or Utu to the Sumerians. Shamash was considered a son of Marduk, a powerful solar god of Sumer, and fierce rival to Enlil, known as Ashur to the Assyrians. This should be seen as no means a coincidence, and may be one of the major reasons for so much of the war and turmoil seen within the empire between the cities of Nineveh and Babylon. The name Marduk is a Babylonian name for the city itself and shows his strong influence all throughout its ancient past. Babylon became one of the largest cities on earth during the time of the Assyrian Empire, with a population of over 200,000 people and a thriving trading center. The city was built equally divided on either side of the Euphrates River, bounded by large defensive walls and gates. Babylon was ruled by a long dynasty of bloodline kings, including one of the most influential of all, known as Hammurabi. King Hammurabi came onto power after his father died in 1712 BC, leaving him the throne. King Hammurabi built Babylon into a powerful military center of the region, which would eventually merge and become the strength of the Assyrian Empire years later. Hammurabi believed he was the divine and rightful king of Mesopotamia and claims he received direct instructions from the god Shamash in the form of moral laws to follow, which he wrote down and inscribed on cuneiform tablets. These laws became known as the Code of Hammurabi and represent one of the oldest cuneiform writings ever found in Babylon and the Mesopotamian world. The Code of Hammurabi is a large, 7.5-foot tall stela with cuneiform writing describing 282 laws to be followed for bringing stability and morality to society. In the preface it states, "Anu and Bel called by name me, Hammurabi, the exalted prince, who feared God, to bring about the rule of righteousness to the land, to destroy the wicked and the evildoers, so that the strong should not harm the weak, so that I should rule over the people like Shamash, and enlighten the land, to further the well-being of mankind." This powerful quote not only connects the ancient Sumerian god of Anu, but also references Bel, known as Marduk, the father of Shamash. In 1595, Babylon was captured by the Hittites of Turkey and became part of the Assyrian Empire. This created tension between Nineveh and Babylon over which location was to be the rightful capital. While the city of Babylon gripped years of civil unrest and turmoil, the official capital of Nineveh, to the north, was growing in power and wealth, increasing its influence over the region. This time period represented the height of the Assyrian Empire, when King Ashurbanipal came onto power and transformed Nineveh and the entire region away from a focus on war and instead towards a new path, one composed of gathering knowledge of the ancient writings of the past. King Ashurbanipal was a powerful leader and intellectual high priest who ruled the Assyrian Empire from approximately 668 to 627 BC. During this time, Ashurbanipal became focused on strengthening the empire by using its influence to gather and locate rare cuneiform writings from all across Mesopotamia. This gathering of thousands of writings and rare artifacts became known as the Royal Library of Ashurbanipal, and is still considered one of the most important ancient libraries ever erected. This massive effort by Ashurbanipal to gather and protect the writings of the past was part of the legacy he wanted to leave behind to chronicle ancient Sumerian and Babylonian history and protect it from being destroyed. In the year 612 BC, shortly after Ashurbanipal's death, war broke out in Babylon, threatening the future of this great library and to tear apart the entire Assyrian Empire. After years of dual monarchies and civil unrest in the region, Babylon joined forces with the Chaldea and Medes people to overthrow the government and topple the empire. Riding north on a cavalry of horses and an army of thousands of soldiers, the army set its sights on sacking the fortified city of Nineveh and plundering all of its riches. Using clever tactics, the armies of Babylon dammed up the Tigris River to the south, flooding much of Nineveh built along its banks, and orchestrated a massive siege of the city. The invading armies charged into Nineveh, surrounding the great library of Ashurbanipal, burning much of its contents, and leaving the remains buried under a mountain of rubble and debris, nearly lost to time for hundreds of years. In 1849, a British research team led by Austin Henry Layard discovered the remnants of the Royal Library of Ashurbanipal and brought its contents back to be housed at the British Museum, where it can still be found to this day. Unfortunately, the large collection of over 30,000 cuneiform writings from all across Mesopotamia was never cataloged or organized, and most of the writings are still untranslated. How could so much of our early history be ignored and simply left on a shelf to gather dust? Or could it perhaps be intentional by those who do not want its contents known? Centuries older than the famous Library of Alexandria, destroyed by the Romans, the Library of Ashurbanipal contains some of the most important writings in all of human history, including the Enuma Elish and the Epic of Gilgamesh. These writings, such as the Enuma Elish Epic of Creation, not only bridge a gap in understanding early human history, but completely rewrites the narrative that's been given for hundreds of years, painting a far older version of human civilizations on Earth and what really happened in the past. The Enuma Elish may be the oldest cuneiform tablet ever found and was written by the ancient Sumerian people thousands of years ago, describing our origin story and solar system. The Enuma Elish contains 7 tablets, with the first 5 describing the turbulent celestial events long ago when these Sumerian gods acted out the roles as the planets of our solar system like a grand play. Of all the tablets, tablet number 6 may contain the most important information of all, describing our early origin story, which has been largely ignored by mainstream archaeologists and considered nothing more than a myth by society. Reading an excerpt from Tablet 6, it states, "They bound him, holding him before Ea. They inflicted the penalty on him and severed his blood vessels. From his blood he, Ea, created mankind, on whom he imposed the service of the gods and set the gods free. After the wise Ea had created mankind and imposed the service of the gods upon them, the task is beyond comprehension. The gods were then divided, all of the Anunnaki, into upper and lower groups. He assigned 300 in the heavens to guard the decrees of Anu, and appointed them as guard." In the future, when the ancient Sumerians are carefully studied, it will completely change our perspective of both history and what's possible in the universe. One has to wonder if the Siege of Nineveh was not simply an attempt to capture and destroy this important library and all of its contents from never being seen in the future. Tablets like the Enuma Elish only survived because they were written on clay and stone and withstood the destruction and fire. Without Ashurbanipal's efforts in amassing this large collection of rare cuneiform writings, we may never have known some of human history's greatest secrets. The most important piece of the puzzle to understand is that the ancient Babylonian and Assyrian empires of Mesopotamia are all predated by the Sumerian culture, which represents the first civilization on Earth to develop advanced writing, laws, agriculture, and mathematics. Because the Sumerians were the first advanced civilization, they represent the unaltered version of correctly understanding what really happened in past events. That's why studying the Sumerians and correctly translating their writings is so important today. Yet little about them is taught in school or known by most of society. But even beyond the wonders of Ashurbanipal's library, Babylon, or the spectacular city of Nineveh, the nearby ruins of Jerwan may hold the biggest secrets of all. Upon arriving in Jerwan, the researcher is greeted by a large stone relief of King Sennacherib, known as Kinnis Rock, which is carved into a sheer cliff, surrounded by the Assyrian gods of Ashur and Melissu. Kinnis Rock is an important mural because it provides an understanding of both the influences and royal hierarchy present during the Assyrian Empire. Looking deeper into these important names, we find out that Ashur was known to the Sumerians as Enlil, and Melissu was known as Ninlil, his consort. Anyone who is well versed on the Sumerian pantheon of gods knows these names well. The name En means Lord, while Nin refers to the feminine version, showing that their names mean both royalty and ownership. Many may find it fascinating to realize that nearly all of these ancient Sumerian gods have connections back to the rulers and kings of Mesopotamia. The real question is, who were these Sumerian gods, and could they be more than just a myth? The famous cuneiform tablet, known as the Sumerian Kings List, begins by stating, "Kingship was lowered from heaven," and lists out the extensive reigns of the early kings of Mesopotamia, some lasting far beyond what we consider possible for a human life. It should be curious to note that in Genesis of the Bible, it mentions nearly the very same phrase, including many other similar teachings and stories, which all have their origins back to the ancient Babylonian and Sumerian people. To understand the ingenuity and importance of the city of Nineveh to Mesopotamia and the Assyrian Empire, we have to dig deeper into the secrets of Jerwan, where some of the most important clues to the past can be found. Jerwan, Iraq features some of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world, including advanced building practices and giant cuneiform writing, which still puzzles researchers and archaeologists today. Jerwan was the site of the first aqueduct system on Earth, utilizing more than 2 million handcrafted stones laid in place over miles of mountainous terrain. But beyond these wonders of ingenuity, the giant cuneiform writing found at Jerwan may be the most perplexing of all. Cuneiform is a style of writing where instead of recording events and information using ink or paint, which fades in a relatively short amount of time, stone or clay was used, with inscriptions and symbols carved into the relief itself. This ingenious method made it possible to protect information well into the future for hundreds of years longer than paper. When comparing other cuneiform writings from all over Mesopotamia, it becomes clear that the giant inscriptions present at Jerwan are highly unusual and unique, even for cuneiform writing. Notice the size of the man's hand in comparison to the cuneiform writing on the limestone blocks. Why would this writing be so large, especially compared to all other cuneiform writing from Mesopotamia, and what could it really say? Sadly, like most of the cuneiform writings from Mesopotamia, such as those in the Library of Ashurbanipal, the giant cuneiform seen at Jerwan is still largely untranslated and should bring up serious questions as to why. The means to translate these ancient languages has been possible for more than 20 years, and yet they are still left untranslated and unknown to most. In the end, we are only left with more questions than answers. Could these giant cuneiform writings seen at Jerwan connect all the way back to the mysteries of the Sumerian kings and the truth about the ancient Anunnaki gods they worshipped? Only time will tell. For now, the incredible secrets of Nineveh, Babylon, and Sumer remain largely buried and hidden under layers of rock and ignorance. But for how long? Our ability to objectively understand the past and the lessons they contain will determine where we go as a society in the future. Hopefully this time, we will discover and preserve these ancient artifacts and writings before it's too late.